I am super excited to talk about this Violent Heart. I think I was DMing Heather, who's here today, when I was reading it because I was so sick and it was the only thing like taking me away from how sick I was. And I was like, well, at least I have this book that I can read at this time. So I am super excited to talk about your second one. Or sorry, your third one. Oh my gosh. Your
Yeah.
third one.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about it. Yeah, it's a really personal book
Yeah.
for me. So, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that it helped you when you were on your deathbed. So,
It did help me. I was like, at least I have Heather's rating to read right now. Was there anything different about writing this one compared to your other books?
oh my God, I feel like every book is taking me on some kind of therapy journey.
Yeah.
For those who have read Walking Through Needles, it's such a dark book, uh, and deals with some really, I mean, every one of my books deals with heavy topics, but
It
it was
does.
it was such a heavy book that going to Hurt for Me felt, even though it also deals with quite a bit of heavy topics like sex trafficking.
Mhm.
And it was like kind of a lighter book. Like there was
Mhm.
fun in writing it.
Mhm.
Leading up to writing it was not so much fun because I had a lot of pressure because there was the pandemic happened. I kind of
Ooh.
went through like probably like a lot of us just went through a
Yeah.
pandemic crash, and then whenever I got into writing that book, like I had quite a bit of pressure to get a book out because Walking Through
Yeah.
Needles had been nominated for an Anthony Award, and so yeah, like I knew I had to do something, and it just came out so quickly. With This Violent Heart, it was the first book that I've written that was under contract.
Ooh.
So,
That's
so
a
it was
different
like,
feeling, I bet.
it was a different feeling because they're like, oh, you have this amount of time, which was not a lot of time to write the book.
Right.
And I remember it was during the holidays. Like it was, uh, um, it feels weird that saying that it was like, let's see, we're 2025, so this was like the end of 2023,
Mm. Mhm.
and where I was like, okay, it's the holidays, we do a lot of stuff in my family, a lot of traditions, and here I was like trying to write for at least 2 hours a day. Like I just had to get out. Like I had to get out 1,000 words a day, or I was going to
Right.
be behind. So I was like constantly behind, and I didn't know if I was going to make my deadline. I was kind of really freaking out about that.
Yeah.
And everyone kept telling me, everybody who's with my publisher, they're like, just let them know and they can extend, but I'm a type A personality and I can't do that kind of shit, so,
Right.
so I was like, I have to get it done. I was one of those kids who like that assignment was turned in early.
Yes. Same.
So, so yeah, I somehow got it turned in, and it was the first time where I was not comfortable at all with what I was submitting to an editor. Like
Oh.
I was like, there's going to be some work on this. But then my editor, Charlotte Hersher, she's amazing. I got to
Mhm.
work with her on Hurt for Me, and she's I don't I wish I could just work with her forever. I love her so much, and she
Yeah.
came back and she was like, it's pretty clean. It's pretty clean. I'm like,
Nice.
and then I started reading my letter, my editor letter, and I'm like, um, and it wasn't like it wasn't horrible, but it was one of those processes that I'm like, I'm so glad that I went through, back in the day, went through pitch wars with
Mm.
Lane and Hallie,
Yes.
because it was kind of like, okay, you have to rework your entire book in like 2 months, and I had so much work to do on Walking Through Needles. So in a way, it wasn't too crazy, but at the same time,
Yeah.
because their schedule is pretty fast with Amazon,
Mm.
they're like, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so I didn't have like a crazy amount of time to do these changes. Um, but the process of writing this Violent Heart, like the actual like emotional process,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, because it is dealing with a bisexual character, and
Mm-hmm.
this was during a time when I was like coming out publicly too.
Mm.
Um, not just with like people in my like close inner circle, you know, family and friends, but like actually coming out. Uh, it it did, like I had a different kind of pressure,
Yeah.
um, than with the other books. Like
Mm-hmm.
Hurt for Me, it was fun because being part of the kink community,
Mm-hmm.
I like my one goal in writing that book was for it to be fun, fast paced, and sexy,
Mm-hmm.
and to be
You did it.
educational, and,
Yeah.
and to like have that
Yes.
educational level. With this Violet Heart, it was more like I just wanted to show that journey of, um, you know, identity and coming to a place where you can show yourself grace
Yeah.
and, uh, you know, forgiveness, and then, you know, self-acceptance. And those are
Yeah.
all things that I am personally working through and still working through. You know,
Yeah.
you write a book and you're like, maybe I hope that I'm going to learn something throughout this process that's going to help me go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I certainly did.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was also, okay, I still have work to do myself. So the next book's
I
going to be fun. The next book is just like,
yeah.
well, I'm still actually going to be working out some things, some generational trauma in this next
As
book.
we
As,
all
as we do,
are all the time.
right?
Well,
I mean,
that
it's,
is
yeah.
a really cool story of how you got to this book. I mean, I'm sure it was very stressful when you're like, how am I going to get this written? But I agree. It has like more, not that Hurt for Me wasn't emotionally nuanced, but it has a lot, it's a lot more emotionally driven, I guess. It explores
Yeah,
a lot more of the emotional part as well.
yeah. And, you know, I like coming at it from, you know, being a bisexual person and then trying to
Mm-hmm.
like put it into the story. uh you know, some of those feelings that I had growing up and being in a
Mm-hmm.
conservative place. I, you know, I'm in Oklahoma. I'm like in one of the reddest states, and
Yeah.
we constantly have just a bombardment of legislation, trying to restrict rights,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like part of the seed for the story. That
Yeah.
and the fact that my daughter, who's now an adult, um I can't, she's like in college, and it's like crazy that she's in college. I'm like, what? I
That's
don't have
gotta
a
feel
college safe
crazy.
student now. But she came out a few years ago as bisexual,
Mm.
and just seeing her be, you know, out and proud, and then being a parent, like trying to like support her, and at the same time not, like I didn't have that experience because both of my parents, have already passed, and so
Mm-hmm.
I I didn't come out to them. I didn't have the
Mm.
opportunity to come out to them. So, uh, it, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm not even out to my daughter, and
Yeah.
it was like I felt, you know, there was this kind of, still that shame, and I like I realized like how much it had been driven into just the fabric of my soul,
Yes.
and and like the more, uh, that things were coming up in society, and, you know, just the constant, backlash against the queer community. I'm like, I felt like I was like hiding myself, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to hide when you're married to a man. You know, you're a
Right.
bisexual person
Mm-hmm.
and you're married to a man. Like it's kind of like this weird space where
Yeah.
you know, and then also having grown up not being able to, not feeling safe to be out, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then coming out later, it's it's, you know, you're like a part of the community, but then you're,
Right.
like it's just this
Yes.
weird this weird feeling. I just had this conversation with someone else the other day, and
Hmm.
and I was like, I just, you feel weird trying to occupy spaces, the queer spaces,
Mm.
um but then you're like, but no, that is who I am.
Right.
And it was so, God, it was like so freeing, like being able to
Mm.
actually put it out there. And then
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in Hurt for Me, there was like a little bit of bisexuality in there.
Oh
And there was,
yeah. Yeah.
clear representation and everything, but with my character. So it was like me teasing people who know me. I
Yeah.
mean, if people have like followed me and they know like how obsessed I am with like women and burlesque, things like that, like they
Right.
probably would have already guessed. People who've
Yeah.
been out and about with me, like they should
Yes.
know.
Right.
So I feel like it wasn't a surprise to like most people. Like,
Right. Like the people who are paying attention.
yeah, for some like family, yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was so good. It was so good to be out, and now it's kind of like I feel, yeah, I'm gonna have queer stories. I'm gonna have queer characters. I mean, I always have, but uh, now, I don't know. It feels different. Like it
Mm.
feels different being able to come at it and show like intimate scenes between two women, and just fully express myself as an author, and
Yeah.
as someone who is bi. So yay.
Yeah. That's so cool though that you can, because I feel like I think some people like maybe don't process their feelings through writing, and then some people do.
Mm,
Like I feel like I'm always it's like at least the general sense of things that I've gone through will probably be the things that come to me to write, is the way I so far that has been the case actually. I guess when I'm thinking about what I wrote. So, but it also made me think when you were talking about like you're like, but it's not like I like know everything or like completely grasp it now or whatever. There's so podcasters I listen to, but Pete and Val always says that life is about forgetting and remembering, and so you're gonna forget stuff and then you're gonna remember it, and it's okay. Like you don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I learned this already, or oh my gosh, I have this down perfectly. Like you will forget some things and then you will remember them, and it's okay.
yeah, and like to kind of go into just that queer identity, and like having not had that community, like
Hmm.
there's so much, there's like language
Yeah.
that I don't know. No matter how much RuPaul's Drag Race that I watch, like I'm not gonna
Yes.
know. And and just in certain experiences that I'm kind of like they're that I haven't had necessarily, like having a relation, like having an actual full blown relationship with another woman that was romantic.
Hmm.
That's I mean, there's obviously a big difference between like a sexual relationship and a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and my husband knows, he knows full well. I'm like, he's younger than me, so this is unlikely. But if he does die before me, he knows I'm full lesbian. Okay,
Yes.
I just got a full lesbian. This is
Oh,
like
that's
literally
amazing.
the only man that like I can, or I shouldn't say only man I can stand. There are a lot of men in my life that I absolutely love
I
men.
know what
I
you
love
mean
my
though.
friends, but as far as like a romantic sense, I'm like, he's the only man that like I can.
Yes. That's like I get that on TikTok on my feed too every now and then. That's like bisexual women are just women who love all women and like 10 really specific men.
Yes.
I'm like, yes, that.
Yes, and before we came on, like me talking about my movie boyfriend Kyle Connor, like
Yes.
I like I don't know. I wouldn't call it unhealthy. I don't think anything's unhealthy as long as you're not like stalking someone.
Right. Totally.
But I mean, do I look at his Instagram like, you know, have I seen every single video that he's posted? Of course I have. I'm like, he's such
Totally.
a good dad. He's such a good actor.
Yes.
But I do at the same time, like I'm doing the same thing for like way more female, for way more actresses than I do male
Yes.
actors. So it kind of plays
Yeah.
out the same way in my real life as I
Right.
do in my, yeah.
It's
Um,
consistent.
it's consistent. It's consistent.
Yeah.
There's very few men that I'm like, okay, they're
Right.
probably one of the good ones. But no.
Right. Right. One of the things I also thought was really cool about this book is that Devon is a character loosely in Hurt for Me. And when I started
Yes!
reading it,
I'm so glad that
there
you saw
was a moment where I was
that.
like, wait a second, I think this checks out. And so then I like, because I read on my Kindle, I like pulled up Hurt for Me and like searched the names and I was like, okay, I was right. So did you know in Hurt for Me that you were gonna expand on Devon, or like how did you decide that part?
Yeah, okay, so the story for, this Violent Heart was already kind of forming after, well, even actually before Hurt for Me, like the initial thing, I was like, okay, I kind of tucked it away and just had other things come up that were more, kind of took my attention more. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I work. So if something like even right now, the book that I'm working on, I was working on a book that deals with the burlesque world, and I've been wanting to do that for like ever, and just I don't know, like it just wasn't working, and then I had this idea just come up in the middle of the night, and sometimes those things happen. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go for it, and with this Violent Heart, it was just kind of doop. And then as I was you know getting through with Hurt for Me, I'm like, I really want to do something with Devon. I feel like she could be a really interesting character. What she, you know, things that she went through and Hurt for Me, and
Yeah.
and carry forward that. And then I was just like, okay, what am I gonna have her do? Like, I don't really want her. Uh, I don't necessarily want to have another sex worker, somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's into dominatrix work. I want her to, have her own kind of identity, what's
Mm-hmm.
important for her. And it made sense for her character. It always made sense for her character, for me to have her be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Going through training, she's kind of wrapping up, getting her practicum hours. I don't know how things work in other states, but like here in Oklahoma, like you have to do like a lot of practicum hours,
Oh yeah.
and you work under a supervisory psychologist to do that work. And so I wanted her to be at that stage in her life where she does have things that are at risk.
Yeah.
And so, I like I feel like with her character, and the things that happen in her teens with her best friend
Mm-hmm.
Summer, and Summer's death, I felt like that would be her career journey, is trying to figure out how to help people to prevent someone from getting to the point of committing suicide, because
Yep.
that's what everybody believes happened with Summer's character, and
Mm-hmm.
she has a lot of guilt surrounding that. So I think that when she, at the beginning of the book, she probably thought that she had worked through a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
with that trauma of experiencing that loss in her teens. And then, this tragic thing happens with one of her clients, and she just immediately spirals.
Yeah.
And so it's very clear to not only her but to her supervisor that you got some
Right.
shit you got to get
Don't
through.
look bad again.
Yeah. So I knew that was going to be like kind of a good catalyst to get her back home, put her back in this environment where she is not comfortable at all. Like she's never felt safe to be out in her, her hometown, this just very small conservative rural hometown. Um, and in particular with her parents too, because they're like, even within that town, like they're like like another level of religious and strictness. um so
Yes.
yeah, it kind of set up a lot of layers that I could explore with her character, not just in like, her stumbling upon some information that, lets her, like, kind of informs her belief that maybe Summer's death wasn't by suicide,
Hmm.
but it lets her, you know, explore that deep seated shame that
Yes.
she has always felt with being bisexual. Like even her safe little bubble in the city, because she lives in the city now.
Right.
um, she's still very kind of, not necessarily fully out. So there's that part of her that she's keeping hidden. um, so yeah, and then of course, like, her reconnecting with Summer's twin
Yes.
brother Keaton, that's like a whole other thing of, like, hiding certain parts of herself and certain things that have happened. So yeah, there's just a lot, there was a lot of fun things to explore, a lot of emotional aspects to explore, and I'm always for, like, diving into characters. uh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
There were a couple things you mentioned that I loved and wanted to bring up too. So there's this unique tension where Devon, back when they were kids and Summer and Keen were both alive. All of a sudden I was scared that was a spoiler. I'm like, no, this is in the synopsis.
yeah, they know the Summer's dead. Summer's dead.
Yeah. um that's her kind of Devon's bisexual awakening, is realizing that she's attracted to, like, male and female twin siblings. And I thought that was such a unique tension to create. So how did you kind of think of that and approach that?
Yeah, so I knew her character. I always knew that her character was going to, have, like, I wasn't sure at first if it was going to be like a friend group or something. And I'm like, I didn't feel like I felt like the stakes need to be higher. and
Ah,
and
yes.
I've like always been really obsessed with twins,
Yeah.
and twin relationships. And I I think it's really interesting, like, fraternal twins too, because
Yeah.
uh, they're, they look different. They're obviously different genders, and so
Hmm.
it kind of it creates this fun dynamic. And I was like, what better than twin siblings for her to be
Right.
attracted to, and create some, really internal and external issues for her.
Hmm.
But as you know, like, a lot of it's just her internal battle of, like, try, wanting to do the right thing by her heart and for the
Hmm.
people that she loves and she cares about. um and then, that shame that's just shrouding everything that she does, that
Hmm.
really, is the driving force for her making just horrible decisions.
You're not
So,
wrong.
but,
Yeah.
also creating some situations where she does get to, explore those sides of
Mm.
her, and try to figure herself out. um, but she definitely gets herself into some really heated situations,
She does.
whether other people know it or not. But yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
The other thing you mentioned, that I thought was cool is, like, you're still, in this book and through Devon, it's still in the kink community, but
Yes.
it did very much feel like, separate experiences like you were mentioning, wanting to not just have another Ray, like just write the same character. So I thought it was cool that their experiences with it felt very different, because that's like sometimes like some of how we get into stereotyping is just assuming that a whole community like acts the same way. So I liked how distinct they were. How did you, or like what kind of like no, this is what I was thinking of. It reminded me that when we talked to you about Hurt for Me, you said that like the dominatrix role was kind of like a stretch for you. So you were like talking to people who like were in that position to kind of research that and understand that. So how did you approach making Devon's a unique experience too?
Yeah, so with Devon, I would kind of like, and she would consider herself to be a switch. So
Mm,
she can kind of play both of those sides, and she enjoys certain aspects of those sides. And I mean, she certainly enjoyed it whenever she was making money from it, probably more than anything.
definitely.
But and you know that that doesn't turn out too well for her. So,
Hmm.
um, but what like you know she leans more on that. I would say more on that sensual domination side. She enjoys pain, but within that more of like sort of loving partnership
Hmm.
more than anything. And she you know she's had those experiences with partners with women partners.
Hmm.
So with you know getting into the relationship that she goes into in the book, like she's coming into it with trauma, with a lot of trauma that she had experienced, not just the trauma that she experienced in her teens with the loss of her friend, but sexual
Hmm.
trauma. And I've always been really interested and that intersection of experiencing sexual trauma and being able to reclaim it through
Yes.
kind of unusual means. And kink,
Hmm.
for you know for a good number of people, have been able to reclaim their sexuality and the control aspect
Hmm.
that they have with their sexuality through kink. And so I wanted to explore that with
Yeah.
her. But yeah, it's not like there's like kink throughout. It's kind of more discussions and then
Yeah.
some hot scenes. So like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
uh, um, or at least I hope people enjoy them. They're
Oh, they
like,
are.
it's like here's the extended scene. Like, and
Right?
that was one of those funny things too. As I was writing it and going through the editing
Uh-huh.
process, I really like. I always try to push as much as I can with scenes, and
Yeah.
there were certain places when it came to the sex in the book that where my editor was like, you know what? I want you to add more here. I want you to add more. And I'm like,
Ooh.
okay, this is like, this is like a whole
Exactly.
chapter. Like, okay. I'm like, all right. So I feel
Yes.
like with this book, it is like really like the longest kind of extended sex scenes, but it's
Hmm.
also, I think, really it shows the kind of this barrier being broken,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
psychologically for her, but then you know physically as well,
Hmm.
with having that kink aspect. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was like I I hope that it came across as like this kind of a beautiful moment for her to just
Hmm.
um, kind of release herself from like some of the shame that she's felt, and then some of that trauma, that fear of being intimate again
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
being connected with someone on that level, because you do have to be so connected emotionally when you're doing kink. Like there's just so
Right.
much involved, not just your body and what you're receiving or giving,
Hmm.
but that trust and that bond building. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it was a really important bonding moment for the characters
Hmm.
and and for her, just that
Yeah.
empowerment. So
Totally. The other thing you mentioned a little earlier, and we've kind of been talking through it, is like how prevalent her shame is. And some of it really comes from Arkana, which is like the setting is a character itself almost in this situation. Um, and it's just like suffocating and like claustrophobic, kind of
Yeah.
the scenes we're reading back then. So, how did you approach creating this town that felt
Yeah.
so heavy?
Yeah. So, I've always been a city girl, but my older siblings both grew up in a really small Oklahoma town, and
Mm,
I used to visit there and spend some time there during the summers, and I would always feel this like sense of like smallness like everywhere, just
mm,
the way that people talked, the way like there would be no people of color, uh,
yeah.
just it was just so different, and not always in a good way, but there were like there were also good aspects too, like people very
Mm,
friendly. Although I would say in Oklahoma, regardless of all, all the horrible things that our legislators do, and a lot of people, but people are generally friendly. So,
that's good.
but it's like kind of like a different level in small towns. You get a lot of huns and how are you doing and
Yes.
all of that. But at the same time, people know your business. Like,
Hmm.
like even when you're coming in, if you're an outsider, uh, like, people will look at you. It's not like a lot of these small towns get a lot of people coming, a lot of visitors coming through. You either
Right.
live there or you don't. And so you kind of feel that. You feel that, oh, I am an outsider. And I really wanted to show that, and that closeness that with the characters, just always knowing everything that's going on with people, and those expectations that are just so built into that community,
Mm,
that the deviation, but then at the same time showing that duplicity too, because a lot of those communities, there's the, okay, you got to go to church and make sure that you're seen, but that doesn't necessarily mean
yes.
that's what you're doing behind doors. And so you see these kids in the community, and they're doing, they're gathering, they're like doing drugs and drinking and doing all these things
Hmm.
because there's really like not a goddamn thing to do in these little towns. So, and that's how it is. Like,
Yes,
it's so boring. It was so
it
boring every
is.
time I would go to like these small towns. There's like the one theater with like literally folding chairs.
Oh yeah. I
You know,
didn't have a theater and I was literally a one stoplight town.
so so yeah, I think it was amazing whenever they did get that theater. It was like,
Yeah.
and you would have like the little cheap popcorn machine you
Yes.
could just buy.
Yes.
So yeah, like and so Arkana, it's funny, a lot of people think that Arkana is like a real town. I'm like, it sounds like it could be a real town.
I
And I'm
thought
like,
it might be, and I looked it
it's
up.
not. It's not. It actually shows up in this horror anthology that I was a part of like several years
Ooh.
ago. I had written this kind of feminist piece in a horror anthology. Um, and so that like the town kind of pulls up, but I was like, I always loved that the Arcana, so like I had to reuse it.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like just that suffocation of, you know these are the boundaries that you have, and you can't really go beyond that, this like little safe bubble that you have. And like even going, like she's in track, and so like going to the city is like, ooh, we're going to the city, and going to the Brahms in
Yes.
the city, like like it's such a big
Yes.
deal. And it is for people living in small towns, just being able to get outside of that bubble, but at the same time it's kind of scary too. And I
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
show that, like, her fear of like leaving that space, wanting so desperately to leave that space because she knows that she's never going to be able to explore, um, all sides of herself unless she leaves, uh,
Hmm.
and then here she leaves, and she still is carrying that with her. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, she doesn't really, she hasn't escaped it.
Right.
Um, she's never processed it. And not
Mm-hmm.
to say that to process things you have to come out fully. I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends who are not out, um,
Mm.
and they, they're still able to have a good life. Just for me personally, it was one of those, like, I felt like there was a level that I needed to be out, and I've kind of looked at that with Devon's character, that was one thing that she needed to do. She needed to be able to come out to her parents and say, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And but also knowing that that could mean the end of having that relationship with her family. And that's
Right.
the case for so many people. And
Yeah.
I honestly, for myself, I really don't know. I don't know what it would have been for my parents. I know when I actually came out as being in the Kink community with my mom before
Yeah.
she did pass, and I remember the first thing that she said was, "Is Kyle beating you up? Is he abusing you?"
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to just really explain that to her. And I the only reason why I said anything to her is because there was like an article that was coming out,
Oh
and
yeah.
like locally, so I knew that it was going to be floating around, and I had already had like people DMing me, like, what, and
Right.
asking
Right.
questions. So I was like, kind of went over that with her, and during that conversation I remember, like, I was so close to just
Mm-hmm.
telling her, and I didn't. And so there's like that part that I kind of was able to resolve through Devon's character,
That's
um,
cool.
because I didn't have that moment myself. And I don't want to give away like how things are in the book or how that reaction goes,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, like, she needed that, regardless of what reaction she was going to get. It was something
Yeah.
that she needed, and in the same way that she needed that release, from a you know on a sexual connecting side of things.
Yes.
So she has several moments where she gets to have that, and then
Mm-hmm.
see what the reaction is going to be, what the response is going to be. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
there.
And kind of, yeah, she gets her opportunities to practice not caring, like the reactions aren't going to matter, just like doing it for herself. Like it doesn't,
Yeah,
eventually it's not going to matter anymore what other people are thinking.
yeah, she's just gonna have to live for herself. And I mean, she sees a really good example of like a person who is out, but at the same time, that's also part of her fear of coming out with,
Yeah.
Jackie's character. Jackie, who is a like one of the few people of color in the community. She's, indigenous, and she, is proud and out as a lesbian, and
Mm-hmm.
and so she's almost like this foil for Devon throughout, uh, not only because like they both like have like, you know, feelings for the same person,
Yes.
but she sees how the community, has treated Jackie. And I mean, she's
Right.
been like, ground to the ground so many times because of her, not just because of the color of her skin, but because of being queer. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's that, part of that fear of coming out is just seeing, those examples of what happens when
Mm-hmm.
you're out. So so yeah, I think a fun moment. I won't give that away, but it like does involve Jackie. So I was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
You have to read to find out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to read, find out. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I love Jackie's character.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Devon can see that, and her character, this person who was like, fuck it.
Yeah,
Uh, what else can they take from me?
exactly.
I they're gonna try anyway, so
Hmm.
I might as well be myself. And
Yes.
I kind of felt that way too, because
Yeah.
there's always the fear of, okay, am I gonna I mean, I always feel that way anyway with readership, especially with the environment that we're in, the political environment, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
vocal. And yeah, I
Yes.
mean, you lose readers, and it's just kind of one of those things. And
Yeah.
so
Shouldn't be
sometimes
that way.
it shouldn't be
Yeah.
that way. And I mean, if people can't get into some female scenes, and I don't know what's wrong with you because they're
Like
beautiful.
you're missing out.
You're missing out. I mean, I read myself. I read so much queer romance, and
Yeah.
a lot of male romance. I just love it.
Yeah.
I eat it up. So I'm like, hey,
Ooh.
expand your horizons. You just don't even know.
Yes.
Like,
You should. You really, yes, for real though. The another interesting thing about this is Summer is like very much an important character, but
yes.
mostly we experience her through everyone else and just her journal entries. So it's kind of a unique way that she's presented. So what was it like creating her character, because it has a really important arc, but like also it's kind of through the perspectives of other people.
Yeah, yeah. And I really battled over whether or not I was just gonna have like a straight POV with her.
Yeah.
Um, and her voice, because I typically write in third person, um, and uh, her voice was just so loud whenever I was writing that I was like, okay, I don't. I don't know if I can make it work with just like her having a straight POV, because there's obviously for the plot
Mhm.
situations, I can't just have people seeing
Yeah.
everything that's happening with her on the page.
Right.
But so her journal entries, that became really important, and just being able to have her voice be there, um, and just knowing what's going on with her internally as compared to what Keaton and Devon are seeing.
Mhm.
And that creates a lot right there, like creates a lot of
Mhm.
tension, because Devon has no idea what's going on in the
Mhm.
background. Like she's taking everything at face value a lot, um, because she's still dealing with her own stuff. She's kind of in her own head so much that
Yeah.
she's not necessarily, um, she doesn't have that capacity too, because she's a teenager. Teenagers are really, they're worried about themselves most of the time, right?
Right.
So she's not like, she's kind of like, well, she's my friendship is hitting this bottom, and I don't know why, and she won't talk to me, and um but not really digging beyond that surface of
Mhm.
thinking, and then with Keaton, it's I that twin connection and some of the experiences that they've had as teenagers. You learn more their family dynamic through a lot of Summer's entries, and kind of
Mhm.
like um, that uh, breakdown of sort of the relationship between Summer and Keaton during those that particular summer that I'm focused on in the
Mhm.
story. So
Yeah.
yeah, I went through so many different ways to tell the story, and including also
Yeah.
having Keaton in there too.
Yeah.
Maybe I have like Keaton's POV in there.
Yep.
And I was like, how do I simplify this as much as possible?
Mhm.
Because like as a writer, you're always trying to think, I don't want to have a gimmick. And
Right.
honestly, sometimes like whenever I read a lot of things, and there's like a journal, I'm like, sometimes
I
it
know.
really works. Sometimes it works.
Mhm.
And then sometimes it's like, okay,
Sometimes you
And
just end up hearing everything twice.
right, yeah, and I'm like, and I kind of starting to feel the same way with like there's tons of books with the like with podcast
Oh,
aspect.
I figured that, yes. I knew where you were headed. Yeah. It's
Yes.
true. Like, you can't just rely on that.
Yeah, and like and some of them I've like absolutely loved, but like I've come across
Yes.
some where I was like, I don't know if this is like working for me.
Yeah.
But some are like done so amazingly well. And but yeah, so I was like, okay, how do I do this and do it in a way that I'm doing justice for Summer, for her character, um and still keep that the story tight.
Mhm.
Because I was always like, I'm always worried about pacing. So,
Yes.
and it's funny, like, so many people have told me, they're like, I felt like it was, pretty fast paced. And as I was
Mhm.
writing it, it did not feel that way at all.
Oh,
And
that's
I think it,
interesting.
so that's every time I would describe it, I'm like, it's a slow burn. And then
Oh,
like people are telling me I feel like it was really fast paced. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to stop saying slow burn.
I know. You mentioned slow burn when we interviewed you the first time, and I was like, "What is she talking about?"
Okay, I just need to
I've
stop. I just
I get it though. I've had the same feeling because, like, with what I've been writing, like, I'll get done and I'll be like, oh, that really, like, I feel like that informed the character, it moved the plot forward. But and then because, like, I'm so into fast paced, I'm like, but is it fast paced enough? Like, do I need this? Like, it's just so
yeah.
easy to do.
Somebody had asked me, I was like, I don't know, I was like doing like a Q&A thing, and like, what do you like, what is for like writing? And they're like, what,
Hmm.
from a craft standpoint, they're like, well, how do you create a fast-paced book? I'm like,
Hmm.
if you want to know the quickest way to do it, the easiest way to do it is just have shorter chapters. Like, that's really it.
Right.
That's really it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if you're getting to the point, and obviously in the book there are, there are a few places where it's important that you had to have that kind of like
Hmm.
extended scene.
Yeah.
Uh but yeah, like whenever I'm getting to like over 1,000 words in a chapter, I start getting like
Yes.
nervous. I'm like, oh, am I saying everything that I need to? And then I have to like go back there and like reevaluate and see where I can tighten things up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And it's I read a lot of books that are
Hmm.
historical gothic
Oh,
fiction,
yeah.
and so you get these like long chapters with beautiful
Sweeping.
language, yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to be able to write that way, but I don't. So
Yeah.
and if I tried to do that in like a book like this, it's like not gonna work at all. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
so that's
Well,
that's
I
that's
I like
really
how
it.
you
But
did write it.
thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned maybe having Keaton's POV as well, and something kind of interesting between, uh, Devon and Keaton, I just said his name, I don't know why it was leaving my brain, um, is they, like, both went through, like, a similar trauma in losing Summer. Obviously, he's her
Yeah.
brother and she's the friend, but it actually kind of through Devon's actions ends up just separating them further apart from each other. And I think grief is probably always complicated, and like, it may not always make sense how you handle it. So how did you kind of want to approach that between Keaton and Devon?
Yeah, so after Summer's death, for certain reasons,
Hmm.
um, Devin, she's just like really consumed with guilt. She truly believes that she had some kind of hand in Summer's death.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's reflective in a lot of the way that a lot of people feel whenever they experience a suicide. I don't know if you
Hmm.
have, but like when a friend or a family member commit suicide, it's like, that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
What could I have done? I should have seen a sign for it. You go through that whole gamut. And that is the headspace that Devon is in as a teen and carried forward all the way into her adulthood as, this
Mm-hmm.
person trying to become a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's never really let that go. And Keaton, um, he's experiencing it from all those different levels of not only having his only sibling die, but having that twin connection,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the first person besides his family that he wants to turn to is like his best friend Devon, and she just has completely shut herself off from him
Mm-hmm.
because of that guilt that she's feeling. And so he's got a lot of confusion, like, and then when they
Yeah.
reconnect as adults, like, he really, the first thing he does is like he confronts her about that, like, hey,
Yeah.
that shit wasn't cool, like, he just like
Yeah.
just didn't even say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he has no idea of the level of that, the guilt that she's feeling, and what, like, what that means for their relationship,
Mm-hmm.
too. So
Yeah.
um so that's always the tension between them, because he's like, I know that you're like, there are things that you're not talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
um I think that happens a lot with people when you have that guilt, like, you you don't want to give yourself away.
Yeah.
You kind of are trying to protect that part of yourself, because you on some level, what's going to happen. Like, people are going to be disappointed, people are going to be
Mm-hmm.
hurt, whatever the case may be. So it's really difficult for her to get back into that space where she can have, like, a friendship with him, and having these other complicated feelings that she has for
Right.
him, that she can't express, or she fears expressing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah. Fun dynamics everywhere in the
yay.
book. But and it is fast paced and it's character driven. So those are the two that I obsess over. So I loved it.
Thank you. I'm so
You're
glad.
welcome. Yeah. I know you said you read a lot. Have you read anything recently that you loved?
Yeah, I've
Any
read
genre.
yeah, I've been doing a lot of blurbs for
Mm.
people, uh and uh and then just reading friends' work too.
Mm.
So I will say, I've got to plug my friend Sean S.A. Cosby, um
Yes.
because I had read his next book that's coming out in the summer, King of
Yeah.
Ashes. It is epic. It's dealing with a lot of sibling stuff and generational trauma.
Uh-huh.
And I know it's been optioned, and I keep telling him, like, when is it happening, because I need to see this, like, right now on the
Yes.
screen. Like, it is, out of any of his books, I see this so clearly on the screen. So
Wow.
but yeah, it's, oh god, just be prepared. It is going to be a kick in the gut, and your heart will
Yeah.
be ripped out. And then my friend Paulette Kennedy, she writes just gorgeous, luscious historical Gothic fiction. A
Nice.
lot of queer representation.
Mm.
And so her next book, The Artist of Blackberry Grange, takes place in one of my favorite places, Eureka Springs. That is like my
Ooh.
happy place. It is like gay mecca there if you haven't
Yeah.
been. So I know it's in Arkansas, but still, like, it really is like gay mecca
Right.
there. and so it takes place in the 1920s. So like, one of my
Ooh.
favorite time periods too.
Yeah.
And it's about this character who she returns to uh like her home to take care of her great aunt. I think it's her great
Mm.
aunt, who has dementia.
Oh.
And there's like a lot of kind of paranormal things going on because
Ooh.
like the character, she's like falling into the paintings of her great aunt, and they
Whoa.
take her to the past, and so she's seeing all these things. It's very much
That's cool.
like Sean's book, like very much about generational trauma and how that's like
Mm.
carried forward, and trying to break that cycle. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just beautiful how it's written. It also has some characters that show up that are in her prior book, The Witch of Tin Mountain, and I
Mm.
absolutely love that book. Lots of lesbian action in that one too.
Nice.
So um oh god, just like, I don't know, like so many.
I mean, those
Oh,
both sound amazing.
Megan Collins,
Oh,
Cross My
cross
Heart.
my heart.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I loved it so much. um God, I don't know, just like so many. I
I kept thinking of you with the pink hair in that one.
I know, I was like, did she write, was this me,
Is
was
she
this me?
writing really?
Is it me?
It's like that Euphoria one. It's like, is this play about us?
But
That's
yeah,
awesome. That's
there are just
awesome. Well,
so many great books coming out. I'm so excited.
like this great
Yes,
book that's
that
coming out. I
this
love
great
this cover
book.
so much. It is so pretty. Where should people follow you to stay up to date on this book and whatever's coming
Yeah,
next?
you can follow me on my website, heatherlevywriter.com. And I'm on Instagram, Heather L. Levy, and Blue Sky at Heather Levy. So those are where I'm
Nice.
at. Not really out on X. I still have an account on there.
Same. Yeah.
I need to end it. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm like holding out. I guess it's because I'm like, I just want to like news. I guess like it's still like the
Right.
place for news. So I'm waiting for Blue Sky to get to the point where they can really be like a good news source. So
Yeah. I know what you mean.
uh, yeah.
Well, I will link the ones that you are on for everyone. And otherwise, thanks so much for coming on again.